Big John McCarthy and Josh Thompson react to the potential fight between Conor McGregor and Paddy Pimblett. Since the cancellation of McGregor vs. Chandler in June, after Conor pulled out of the fight due to an injury, enthusiasm about the matchup started dying down. And recently, for the first time, Chandler stated in an interview that he would consider other fights rather than wait for Conor McGregor indefinitely. With Dana White saying that Conor definitely won't fight this year, the possibility of Chandler finally letting his dream fight go and use the much valuable time to get some fights in became more likely. Chandler is 38 years old now, and time is definitely not on his side, especially considering the fact that he's competing in the lightweight division. Recently, Mike spoke about the fights that interest him besides McGregor and mentioned a couple of names he'd be willing to fight next, Charles and Dustin. So, if McGregor comes back, there is a possibility that Michael Chandler no longer will be his opponent. One interesting name as an option for Conor's opponent is Paddy Pimblett. John McCarthy and Josh Thompson discussed this possibility and gave an assessment of how big this matchup would actually be.
You're underestimating the ability of the UFC to market shit to anybody and they'll buy it.
I agree. You know what? They're fantastic at it. They are a marketing machine, and you're absolutely right. They can sell ice to Eskimos.
And this is not one of those fights I think is going to be a hard sell for them. You got the young, up-and-coming UK fighter to fight the old Irish fighter that basically set the world on fire. Now it's a changing of the guard. We have his replacement. The UFC will run with the replacement of Conor McGregor. I think it automatically sells. It sells itself. You know, the whole UK all of UK will watch it. US market will watch it because we're groupies. And then Canada will probably watch it because Canada just does everything we do. And, Australia's out there on the island, right? But I mean, they're going to watch it because they probably don't even like Conor. And, it's like, it's going to be a changing of the guard. This should be fun.
Islam Makhachev's coach reveals plans for Islam to move up to the middleweight division. Javier Mendez has been one of the top coaches for Team Khabib for a long time now. Mendez strengthened his ties to Nurmagomedov and Makhachev after visiting Dagestan multiple times and getting introduced to Khabib's father, who was the mastermind of the Dagestani wrestling system. Since Khabib's rise and Abdulmanap's death, Javier has become closer to the camp and lately has adopted somewhat of a promotional role for his fighters, often pushing for certain matchups and trying to build interest around the new prospects coming out of their gym. It seems that Islam Makhachev's ambition to conquer another division doesn't limit itself to the 170-pound weight class. According to Mendez, Islam has been considering an eventual move to the middleweight division, though he acknowledged the challenges associated with that decision. We all knew about Islam's intention to move up welterweight and become a two-division champion, as being at lightweight has become somewhat boring to the Dagestani. This is something that I mentioned in the last video, as a result of Makhachev's ultimatum to Dana and the brass. Anyway, Javier Mendez discussed Islam's potential move to the middleweight division in a recent interview. Quote, "We have discussed that for some time now. Islam said that for middleweight, he would have to put on some muscle. This isn't just me saying that. Islam's thinking the same thing. So it's not really ideally something that we're looking at, but it is something that is being discussed. He would have to put on size if that was ever to happen. If he was able to pull something like that off, if that would ever materialize and he succeeded, that would put him in the top 3 of all time. The fight against Duplessis would go really well. The champ has good stand-up. He's got a good ground game. It would be one of those situations where it would be fought in all areas, for sure. But Islam is a small guy, so he would have to put on some muscle if that was ever presented. He couldn't do it at the weight that he's at now. That'd be pretty tough. He will have to put on some weight in order to compete at 185. It can be done, but he would certainly need to put on some serious muscle in order to accomplish that. First, he needs to defend his title one more time at lightweight in order to break the record from 3 to 4, and then we'll see."
Joe Rogan shares thoughts on Jones vs. Aspinall matchup and corrects a casual fan who suggested that Jones' finish of Cyril Gane was kind of fake and that he's lost motivation to compete ever since becoming rich. With the recent drama of uncertainty about Jones vs. Stipe fight, which is the one that's been planned for a long time, The problem is, Jones' injury delayed it, and in the meantime, Aspinall showcased impressive performances, claiming the interim heavyweight belt. So, naturally, the pressure on Jon to move on from the fight with the former heavyweight champion, who's on the verge of retirement anyway, to unify titles with the fresh and dangerous challenger, has been steadily increasing. Some even accuse Jon of ducking Aspinall, as they feel the heavyweight champion is worried to risk losing before retirement. Most criticism is irrational, of course, and the certain loud portion of fans on social media seem to have forgotten or never known about Jon clearing multiple generations of fighters and practically being undefeated. Nevertheless, people calling for Jon to stay in the sport might entice him to do so, and as we've seen, he has changed his completely dismissive attitude toward that possibility to a more open one. Joe Rogan commented on the potential fight between Jones and Aspinall.
You know, as soon as Jon Jones got rich, all of us, I'm at home. Let me guess. Never gonna see you!
I don't think that's what happened with Jon. With Jon, there was a bunch of other factors. The greatest psycho that's ever. I think Jon Jones and Tom Aspinall is an interesting fight because Tom is a big, fast heavyweight. He's a fucking powerhouse, man. And he's big. He's big as shit. And
big as shit.
If you look at fights where Jon has had difficulty, some of them have been like really elite strikers.
Watching him and Cyril Gane, and all respect to Cyril Gane, but he never felt anything. It was a made-up guillotine even.
Oh, God. But as long as he gets a hold of your neck and he's doubling you up in that position where he can press his chest on your head, that's, with a guy like Jon, with his kind of squeeze, that's horrific.
Dan Hooker discusses future following his win over Mateusz Gamrot. After earning a hard-fought decision victory over the Pole, the Hangman put himself in the upper class of the lightweight division and extended his winning streak to 3, all against solid competition. So for the first time ever, Dan is close to a championship fight. He would likely have to get at least 1 or 2 more wins in the top 5 before the opportunity can be presented for him to challenge Islam Makhachev or whoever will hold the title at the time. There are multiple options for Hooker, and all of them are very exciting for the fans, considering Dan's and their fighting styles. Charles Oliveira, Max Holloway, Arman Tsarukyan, and more. The most likely opponent is probably Charles Oliveira, but the landscape is pretty open right now, and according to him, Dan isn't particularly picky about who will it be in the cage with him next time. In a recent interview, Dan talked about multiple different possibilities. Quote, "There's some cool fights out there. Any of those boys in the top 5, I'm cool with. I'd be over the moon with any of those guys." Someone was like, "You didn't mention the rematch with Dustin." Well, I'm not gonna stand there and yell out every possible name. I feel like I listed enough people. But yeah, any of those fights are massive fights, and that's the beauty of being in the top 5. I've seen fans talk about me versus Max for the BMF title. From what I've seen, Max is pretty hell-bent on getting his featherweight belt back. But we will see. Who knows how it plays out? Fans love the BMF fights and always mention my name in that category. If Arman breaks his leg tomorrow, then who's gonna fight Islam for the belt? So it's like, I just know that whatever happens next, I need to get myself back in the gym and be ready for it. Also, the Arman fight. I feel like that would be the toughest one to get through before getting the title shot. Like Gamrot, people feel that I can't beat him, and so, if I could pick any road to the title, I would pick the hardest one possible. I just like doing things the hard way. Also, the Charlie Olives fight. That's just a firefight. People want to see it. I struggle to see that fight get out of round 1, so there's a lot of options. We'll see what happens." End quote.